Thorne Blackwood could buy anything in the world except the one thing he needed: light for his son. Caspian had never seen his father's face, only the weight of his footsteps, the chill of his cologne, the way the air in the mansion tightened whenever another specialist said the word Thorne hated most: irreversible. Money buried hope under reports and scan images. Thorne flew surgeons across oceans, bought machines that hummed like distant storms, signed checks with numbers that made hospitals whisper his name, but every flight home ended the same way, in a dark car beside a boy staring at nothing. So when someone mentioned a chef who treated ingredients like medicine, Thorne didn't hear promise. He heard one last excuse to spend what he could not spend on time. Jaxon Quill walked into the Blackwood kitchen like the only person in the building who wasn't afraid of the silence. He ignored the chrome, the imported knives, the quiet army of appliances, and went straight for the light over the island, standing Caspian beneath it as if the boy were a seed he meant to coax out of the soil. He talked about flavor as if it had colors, about steam as if it carried songs, and the boy with blind eyes tilted his head, listening, as though for the first time something in this house was speaking directly to him. Thorne watched all of it through cameras he pretended were for safety. The feeds became his new ritual, small glowing rectangles where he could worship control, pause it, rewind it, search each frame for the mistake that would justify firing this man like all the others. But night after night, the only crime he caught was Caspian smiling in a kitchen that had never once felt like home. Then came the root. A crooked, ugly thing flown in a pressurized case, whispered about in villages Thorne's money had never cared to visit. Jaxon shaved it, ground it, bled it into water, reduced that water until it thickened and began to glow like trapped sunset inside a glass vial. The same liquid gold light that would one day hover inches from Caspian's unseeing eye. If the story already has you leaning in. If you're feeling that tightness in your chest for a father who thinks he can outspend fate and a boy who has never seen his own shadow, pause with them here for a second. Hit subscribe right now so you don't miss what Jaxon is about to do in that kitchen. Tap like if you believe some cures don't come from hospitals, and tell in the comments where in the world you're watching from, because stories like this travel farther than private jets ever could. And if Thorne's desperation or Caspian's loneliness reminds you of something you've lived through, a diagnosis, a late-night prayer, a moment you would give anything to rewrite, share it below. Someone else scrolling in the dark might need to see your light. The mansion itself sat like a fortress on the hill, all glass and stone and silence. A palace designed to keep tragedy out, but somehow perfect at keeping grief in. From the outside it looked invincible. From the inside it looked like a museum built for things that could never be touched. Especially the boy whose world had never known color, and the chef who had arrived with nothing but his knives, his strange faith in nature, and a vial of glowing gold that no one, least of all Thorne Blackwood, saw coming. Thorne Blackwood did not build a home. He built a container for fear. From the road below, the mansion looked like a promise. Glass glittering against the hill, stone walls wrapped in manicured hedges, fountains throwing light into the air like it was nothing. Inside, everything was temperature-controlled, filtered, polished, and timed. Lights rose at 6, dimmed at 10. Security doors sighed open on silent hinges. Cameras watched every corridor like unblinking nerves in a metal skeleton. Only one room refused to match the brochure. Caspian's suite was dark even in the middle of the day. Heavy curtains, soft walls, edges rounded and padded so nothing could hurt him. Machines hummed gently, monitors glowed, and under all of it sat a boy whose eyes never quite found the places they were supposed to land. He knew the room by sound and touch, not by color. The textured strip along the wall that led to his bed. The faint buzz of the air filter above the window. The exact weight of his father's hand when it rested on his shoulder, brief and careful. Like Thorne was afraid the boy might break. Doctors came and went, leaving echoes behind. Their shoes clicked on the marble hall. Their voices were soft, clinical, full of words like degeneration and probability and best possible outcome. Thorne listened, signed forms, wrote numbers that could have bought small countries. Caspian heard only the tone, the pity, the finality that wrapped itself around his future like another curtain being drawn. At night, When the house finally stopped pretending to be alive, Thorne sat alone in his study with the blinds shut. Reports spread across his desk, charts and scans and experimental protocols, all saying the same thing with maddening politeness. There is nothing left to try. There is nothing left to buy. He stared at those pages until the symbols blurred, until he saw neither letters nor numbers, only the blank shape of failure. He had built his empire by making impossible things obey. Markets, rivals, entire governments. If something resisted, he crushed it with scale and strategy. But the cells in his son's eyes did not care about his net worth. They had their own quiet revolt, and every day Caspian woke up in darkness was a reminder that this was the first war Thorne Blackwood could not simply outspend. The staff learned to step lightly around that fact. They polished silver, changed linens, moved like ghosts through the wide halls. No one raised their voice. No one laughed too loudly. The mansion became a museum of quiet competence, and at the center of it, like a priceless artifact no one was allowed to touch, sat a child who had never seen the sky he lived above. The suggestion of a chef came almost as a joke point. One of the more honest doctors, exhausted with being flown across continents for yet another consultation destined to end in the same apology, mentioned a man in passing. Not a surgeon, not a neurologist. A chef who worked with sensory rehabilitation, whatever that meant. Someone who believed flavor could wake up pathways medicine had written off. Thorne barely looked up from the report he was shredding with his eyes. "A cook," he said. "You're recommending a cook." The doctor shrugged, hands spread, nothing left to protect. "You've tried everything else." The line should have ended there, but the words stayed. They followed Thorne into the days that came next, into long car rides between boardrooms and silent returns to the hilltop fortress. A cook. The idea offended him. It also refused to let go, because buried beneath his contempt was the single, pathetic truth he no longer said out loud, that he was running out of last chances. The dossier on Jaxon Quill was thinner than any Thorne had ever approved. No degrees from the right institutions. No prestigious fellowships. Just a trail of quiet testimonies from people who did not normally appear on his radar. A child who started eating after years of aversion. An elderly woman who began describing colors in sound after a series of bizarre, aromatic meals. Nothing peer-reviewed. Nothing that fit into the spreadsheets he understood. It should have been easy to dismiss. Instead, he found himself reading every line twice. The first time Thorne saw Jaxon in person, the man was stepping out of a modest car at the foot of the driveway, carrying a worn leather knife roll and a single duffel bag. No entourage, no visible awe at the mansion stretching above him. He looked up, took it in, and gave a small nod, as if assessing a restaurant he might agree to cook in if the kitchen met his standards. That irritated Thorne more than it should have. "You understand the parameters," Thorne said in the foyer, voice echoing off marble and glass. "My son's condition is documented. There will be no experiments, no unapproved substances, no contact without clearance. You cook, you follow my rules, you get paid. That's it." Jaxon listened without interrupting. He was younger than Thorne expected, with the kind of stillness that made the house staff suddenly feel noisy by comparison. When Thorne finished, Jaxon looked past him, just for a heartbeat, toward the hallway that led to Caspian's room. "I understand the boy hasn't tasted anything real in a long time," he said. "We'll start there." "Not, sir. Not Mr. Blackwood." The boy. Thorne's jaw tightened. Somewhere deep inside, the old reflex flared. The urge to send him away, to protect the last fragile layer of control he had wrapped around his son's life. But the memory of sterile offices and soft, defeated apologies rose again, stacking themselves against his pride until it was clear which weighed more. "Your kitchen is downstairs," he said instead. "You'll find it fully equipped." He led Jaxon through the house, down past the framed awards and the quiet art and the security doors that buzzed them through each new layer of his world. The kitchen sprawled across the rear of the mansion. Polished stone counters, industrial-grade appliances, knives set in perfect rows. It was the one room built purely for abundance, yet it felt as unused as a showroom. Meals here had been fuel, not joy, scheduled, calculated, served on time, and cleared away before they could become memories. Jaxon paused on the threshold, taking it in. For a moment he said nothing, then he stepped inside and ran a hand across the nearest counter, fingertips catching every faint scratch in the stone. "It's very clean," he murmured. Thorne heard the unspoken word underneath. "Empty." "You'll have access to anything you need," Thorne replied sharply. "Ingredients, equipment, staff. Just send the list to my office." Jaxon turned, and there was the slightest hint of a smile. Not mocking, not impressed. Curious. "I'll need quiet," he said, "and time with Caspian, not just to feed him, to teach him how to listen to what he's eating." Thorne almost laughed. The sound came out wrong, more like a cough. "He's blind, not deaf." Jackson's eyes softened in a way Thorne hated, because it felt like pity and something worse, understanding. "That's exactly why this can work," he said. "You've built him a cage to keep the dark from hurting him. I'm here to show him there's more inside that darkness than you've let him touch." The words landed like a slap. Thorne drew himself up, ready to shut this down, ready to remind the stranger whose name was etched into the stone outside and whose wasn't. But then, from down the hall, came the sound he never could ignore. Caspian's soft cough. His slow, careful footsteps along the textured strip on the wall. Thorne swallowed whatever he had been about to say. "This is your final chance," he said quietly. "If you fail him, you're gone." Jaxon nodded, no drama, no fear. "If I fail him, I'll walk myself out." The mansion held its breath as the new hire set down his knives and opened the pantry like he was reading a book. Spices, herbs, grains, things Thorne had never bothered to know by name. Jaxon began pulling them down, lining them up, rearranging the shelves as though he were retuning an instrument that had been stored wrong. For the first time in a long time, the house felt different. Not warmer, not yet, just waiting. The invasion began with a cutting board. Jaxon slid the thick slab of wood onto the center island and turned slowly, taking in every gleaming surface like a critic in an empty gallery. Chrome, glass, induction panels that lit up at a touch, vacuum-sealed drawers full of knives that had never tasted anything messier than a tasting menu. Thorne had spent a small fortune turning this room into a shrine to efficiency. "It's impressive," Jaxon said at last. Thorne waited for the rest. The gratitude, the awe. "It's also wrong," Jaxon added softly, "for what your son needs." The word landed like a dropped plate. Thorne folded his arms. "You'll find every commercial-grade appliance available. Anything else you need, my staff will order." Jaxon opened the nearest refrigerator, scanned rows of labeled containers, and closed it with the kind of finality most men reserved for negotiations gone bad. "I don't need more machines," he said. "I need ingredients that remember where they came from." Thorne's jaw tightened. "You're in Connecticut, not a jungle market. Then we'll bring the jungle here." Jaxon pulled a small notebook from his pocket, its cover stained and warped from years of steam and spice. He flipped it open and began to speak, voice steady, each word scribbled as he went. "Wild cacao beans, not processed. Unwashed sea salt from cold water. Black garlic aged at least 60 days. Fresh lion's mane mushrooms. Fermented tiger nuts. Real vanilla beans, not extract. Aged miso from a small batch, not industrial. Raw honey that hasn't seen heat. And a root called aerosol if your buyers can find it. It goes by different names. They'll need people who ask questions in the right villages." Thorne stared. "You sound like a travel brochure written by a madman." Jaxon smiled faintly. "Madmen don't usually catalog their madness. They just serve it." He tore out the page and set it on the counter. The list looked obscene against the clean white stone. Like graffiti on a museum wall, Thorne didn't touch it. You realize half of this is either illegal to import or impossible to verify. Not illegal, Jaxon said. Just inconvenient. There's a difference. Your money can handle inconvenient. Can't it? That needle slid under Thorne's skin. Of course his money could handle inconvenient. That was the one thing it did better than any man alive. But this felt like mockery. As if Jaxon were rearranging the rules of a game Thorne had already won. He bent, picked up the list between two fingers, and glanced over it. No dosages, no protocols, just names. Earthy, strange. All of them a threat to the sterile order he'd enforced since the first diagnosis. If any of this harms my son, Thorne said quietly, your career will end before the first article is written. Jackson's gaze did not waver. If any of this harms your son, you won't have to end my career. I'll know I failed, and I don't live well with failure. Thorne hated how calm he sounded. He left the kitchen with the list burning a line in his palm. By the time he reached his study, he had already called procurement, legal, and security. Shipments would be tracked from origin to doorstep. Suppliers vetted. Labs on standby to test anything that arrived in unmarked burlap instead of sterile plastic. If the chef wanted the wild, Thorne would put a barcode on the wild and monitor it from 3 angles. Still, it wasn't enough. The thought came to him while he stood at the window, looking down at the slate roof over the kitchen. Jaxon alone with his knives, his notebook, his ideas about ingredients that remember. Caspian somewhere above, sealed in his careful darkness. Control loosened in Thorne's chest like a fraying knot.By nightfall. Contractors were in the mansion, moving with quiet urgency under Thorne's clipped instructions. New cables threaded through walls. Small black domes anchored high in corners. Microphones tucked into light fixtures. The existing security system had been built to keep people out. This one was designed to keep a single man exposed. He watched as they calibrated the feed on a tablet. 4 split screens framing the kitchen from every angle. The island, the stove, the pantry door, the back entrance where deliveries would arrive. Audio levels hummed green along the bottom, reacting to the slightest clink or whisper. Can it zoom? Thorne asked. With gesture control, the technician said, demonstrating. 2 fingers expanding. The image tightened on a cutting board, every groove clear. Good. Keep the recordings backed up off-site, redundant storage. No gaps. Yes, sir. When they left, the house fell back into its curated silence, but now it pulsed with a new layer of watching. Thorne sat alone in the darkened study, the tablet glowing on his desk. The first frame already showed Jaxon, alone in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, knives spread like instruments before surgery. He moved differently when he thought no one was looking. Slower, almost reverent. He opened jars and inhaled deeply, eyes closing, as if each scent were a paragraph in a language he was translating. Then he began to rearrange everything. Spices by fragrance instead of label, oils by viscosity instead of brand, knives by the sound they made when they kissed the board. Thorne's irritation sharpened into suspicion. This was his house, his system. His money hung in every light and hinge and imported tile. Yet this stranger had walked in and, within hours, made the most expensive room in the building look like it belonged to him. He told himself this was why the cameras were necessary. Not because of paranoia, because of pattern recognition. Men who believed too deeply in anything that could not be measured were dangerous. They cut corners. They justified risks. They called recklessness faith. On the screen, Jaxon picked up the battered notebook again. He turned to a blank page, then wrote a name at the top. Caspian. Thorne leaned closer without meaning to. Jaxon tapped the pen thoughtfully against the board. We're going to wake up your world, kid, he murmured. 1 sense at a time. The audio caught every syllable. Thorne's hand tightened around the tablet. Fraud, he told himself. Showman, A man who liked to hear his own promises. He raised the device and snapped a still image of the feed. Jaxon's face caught in profile, the half-smile, the knives, the ordered chaos of new arrangements behind him. He sent it to his head of security with a single line: "Keep extra eyes on him." Then he settled back in his chair, the house dark around him, the kitchen bright on the screen. Let the chef invade his precious kitchen. Let him stack his wild roots and aged pastes like charms on an altar. Thorne would be right here, in the shadows of his own fortress, watching every move, waiting for the slip that would prove what he already believed. Hope was a con, and Jaxon Quill was just the latest man to try selling it in his house. By the third morning, Thorne knew the chef was never going to cook a normal breakfast. The cameras came alive at 6. Jaxon moved through the kitchen in a soft gray t-shirt and apron. Hair still damp from a shower, sleeves rolled past his elbows. No bacon, no eggs, no neat stacks of pancakes to be cut into polite triangles. Instead, he surrounded himself with jars and roots and bowls that steamed in strange colors. He started with sound. On the screen, Thorne watched Jaxon drag a wooden spoon slowly along the rim of a glass bowl. It sang, a low, trembling note that seemed to vibrate through the speakers and into Thorne's chest. Jaxon listened, adjusted the pressure, drew a higher sound from the next bowl, then another. When he was satisfied, he set them in a curved line on the counter like an unfinished melody. Then he added smell that a pan warmed, empty at first, until the air above it shimmered. Jaxon dropped in a thumb of dark root, broken open, and a spill of seeds that hissed as they hit the heat. The scent rolled out in waves even through the vents upstairs. Earthy, smoky, threaded with a sweetness that didn't belong in anything healthy. Thorne found himself breathing deeper without meaning to. Only when the kitchen was full of both noise and aroma did Jaxon press the intercom. "Morning, Caspian. Ready to work?" The boy's voice came back small but steady. "Yes." Thorne left his desk and stepped closer to the screen, though he told himself he wasn't doing that. Caspian entered the kitchen carefully, fingertips trailing the guide strip along the wall until his hand found the edge of the island. Jaxon didn't rush to meet him. He waited within reach, as if the boy were the one choosing the distance. "Stop there," Jaxon said gently. "Hear that?" He tapped one of the singing bowls. The note rang out, clear and thin. "That's the sound of sour," Jaxon said. "Taste has shapes in the air. This one is sharp. It rises fast, then disappears, like lemon on your tongue." He tapped another bowl lower, slower. "This is bitter, heavy. It sits in your chest, like dark chocolate that doesn't want to be friendly at first." Caspian tilted his head, eyes unfocused, body leaning a fraction toward the sound. "Now smell," Jaxon said. He slid the pan closer, guiding Caspian's hand only until his fingers found the counter. The boy bent forward. The steam hit him. His mouth opened just a little. "It's warm," Caspian whispered. Like when the rain hits the road, but sweeter." "Good," Jaxon said. "That's the root talking. It grew in hard ground. It remembers. Take a breath in slow. Tell me what color it feels like." Caspian's brow furrowed. Thorne almost scoffed. Color. The boy had never seen any. The word belonged to picture books and pitying explanations. "Brown," Caspian said after a moment. "But glowing? Like if brown could shine." Jaxon's grin flashed quick and bright. "Exactly. Not everything that glows is white or gold. Some things glow from inside their darkness. Remember that." He moved around the island, never touching the boy unless necessary, narrating each step. "Now I'm going to blend it. Hear the difference." The blender roared to life, a hard mechanical growl that made Thorne wince. Jaxon didn't flinch. He raised his voice just enough to slip between the noise and Caspian's fear. "Listen past the machine. Underneath, you'll hear the root breaking down, giving up its secrets. Once it does, we can borrow them. When the sound cut off, the kitchen felt suddenly enormous. Caspian's shoulders dropped, tension leaving his frame. "That," Jaxon said softly, "is the sound of something changing for you." He poured the thick liquid into a small glass and set it beside the boy's hand. "First rule," he said, "nothing goes into your mouth without your consent. You're the king here, not me. You smell it. You decide if it gets a throne." Caspian laughed, a quick breathy sound that hit Thorne harder than any diagnosis ever had. It was so unprepared. "What if I hate it?" the boy asked. "Then we've learned something," Jaxon said. "Knowledge without suffering. My favorite kind." Caspian lifted the glass, hands steady. He sniffed. His face moved through confusion, then curiosity. He took a slow sip. The change wasn't dramatic. No cinematic gasp. No sudden wide eyes. Just a small, surprised hum at the back of his throat, like a song catching before it becomes words. "It's hot," he said, "but not like fire. Like when you stand too close to the sun in a window. It pushes, but it doesn't burn." "Where do you feel it?" Jaxon asked. Caspian pressed a hand to his chest. "Here, and behind my nose, and in my ears a little. It's buzzing." "That's your body mapping a new color," Jaxon said. "Not for your eyes, for everything else. We're repainting your world from the inside out." On the tablet, Thorne realized he had been holding his own breath. The routine didn't change much over the next days, but the details did. Jaxon never served the same thing twice. One morning he roasted citrus until the kitchen smelled like burnt sunshine, then cooled it with crushed mint and ice, letting Caspian crack the cubes with a wooden mallet just to hear them shatter. Another day he lined the counter with herbs, blindfolded the boy even though he didn't need it, and had him guess each leaf by the sound it made when rubbed between fingers, by the temperature of the smell. Cold basil, warm thyme, sharp rosemary that felt green and silver at the same time. Sometimes Jaxon made nothing at all. He would open the windows instead, letting wind slip in and tangle with the steam. He'd have Caspian stand in the middle of the room, eyes closed, and point to where the air felt thickest, where it carried cinnamon, where it carried garlic, where it carried nothing but night. "This is the music of the air," he said once, his voice low, almost reverent. "Every kitchen plays a different song. Yours used to be silent. Hear it now." Caspian's head moved like a conductor's hand. He pointed, turned, smiled. That smile wrecked Thorne. That it wasn't the polite curve he'd seen in hospital corridors. The one Caspian wore to reassure nurses and strangers that he was being brave. It was crooked, unguarded, tugging more on one side than the other. It lived in his cheeks before it ever reached his mouth. It was the face of a boy who had forgotten, for one fragile moment, that anything in his life was wrong. Thorne watched from his study as that smile appeared again and again, caught in still frames and moving images, cataloged by his own paranoia. He replayed clips late at night, Caspian laughing when a pot boiled over and Jaxon declared it rebellious, Caspian clapping at the rhythm of chopped vegetables, Caspian pressing his palm flat on the cool stone of the counter and declaring it blue cold instead of just cold. The more the boy changed, the more Thorne's unease grew, because there were no measurable metrics here, no charts, no test results, just a boy who seemed less like a patient and more like a child, guided by a man who talked to spices and steam as if they were old friends. Felt unprofessional, uncontrolled, dangerous. Yet every time Thorne considered pulling the plug, firing the chef, sealing the kitchen back into sterile quiet, he would catch another frame on the screen. Caspian, mid-laugh. Caspian, head tilted back, listening to the wind howl over the exhaust fan like distant ocean waves. Caspian, eyes closed tighter than usual, as if he were trying to see with everything except sight. One evening, long after the staff had gone, Thorne watched Jaxon wipe down the counters while Caspian sat on a stool, swinging his feet. The boy's voice drifted through the speakers, soft and thoughtful. "If the air has music, He asked. "What do you think my darkness sounds like?" Jaxon paused, cloth in hand. "I think," he said slowly, "it sounds like a canvas before the first color hits it, quiet, expectant, not empty, just waiting for you to decide what goes there." See, the first sign that something was changing was the box.It arrived just after dawn in the back of a beat-up delivery van that looked like it had taken a wrong turn into the wrong neighborhood. No logo, no glossy branding, just a wooden crate lashed with rough rope, the corners darkened by age and travel. The driver signed his name with a hand that shook slightly, like even he wasn't sure if he should be here. Jaxon met him at the service entrance alone. Thorne watched from his study, the image tight on the tablet, knuckles whitening around the frame as Jaxon pressed his palm flat against the crate for a moment before opening it, the way a priest might touch a casket before lifting the lid. Inside was not much to look at. A root. Ugly, twisted, the color of old bruises. Strands of dried soil clung to its skin like it had refused to let go of the place it had grown. Jaxon lifted it with both hands, surprisingly careful, as if it could slip through his fingers and vanish back into myth if he wasn't gentle enough. So this was the great ingredient. Thorne felt foolish for the way his heart sped up. In the kitchen, Jaxon set the root on his favorite board and switched off the overhead vent. He shut the windows. He dimmed half the lights. The room tightened around him, becoming less a workspace and more a circle drawn in invisible chalk. "Morning, Auro soul," he murmured. "Let's see what you remember." He spoke in English, but Thorne heard something older hiding underneath. The first cut was slow. The knife sank in with a dull, resistant crunch. No clean slice. The root fought back. A thick, dark sap bled out, sluggish, almost black at first, then deepening to an impossible molten gold as the air hit it. It clung to the blade like liquid metal. Thorne leaned closer to the screen before he could stop himself. Steam rose where the sap touched the knife's warm steel, carrying a smell the microphones couldn't catch but that seemed to bend the air around Jaxon's face. His eyes fluttered shut. When he opened them, they were bright, almost fevered. "Vitality," Jaxon said softly, like he was translating for an invisible audience. "Heat in cold bones. Morning in tired blood." He chopped the root into uneven chunks, each one oozing a little more of that uncanny glow, and swept them into a heavy, blackened pot that looked older than any other piece of equipment in the kitchen. Water followed, not from the tap, from a glass bottle he'd kept sealed in the back of the pantry since his first day. The burner clicked, then roared. The liquid inside went from clear to cloudy, from cloudy to a soft amber, from amber to something that looked like a captured sunrise trying to claw its way out. It bubbled thickly, each burst sending flecks of light to the surface that vanished as soon as they appeared, like thoughts you almost remember and then lose again. For the first hour, Jaxon said nothing. He just watched. Thorne did the same. He told himself he was cataloging evidence, observing an unverified substance being prepared in his house. But the longer he stared at the shimmering pot, the less it felt like surveillance and the more it felt like witnessing something he didn't have a name for. By noon, the dread settled. Ends.It came the way it always did, with logic first. This was unsanctioned, unreviewed, no medical board, no peer-reviewed trials, just rumors about shamans in mountains who drank this stuff and danced through storms. Hearsay instead of data. Then came the older fear, the one that lived beneath the language of contracts and protocols. What if it worked? He pushed away from the desk, anger a convenient mask for panic, and barked for his head of security. Within minutes, a team was combing through everything they had on Jaxon Quill. Passports, tax records, employment history, video from the day he arrived, slowed and scrubbed for any sign of a lie. Nothing. Thorne authorized deeper pulls. Phone records where legal, social feeds, mentions in obscure culinary forums and wellness blogs. Somewhere in this man's past there had to be a crack, a disgruntled client, a malpractice claim, a late-night rant from someone who thought they'd been scammed. Instead, a different pattern emerged. A boy in Lisbon, once terrified of texture, suddenly eating whole meals with his fingers, describing every bite out loud like a poet. A retired violinist in Kyoto, who, after losing her hearing, claimed she could taste pitch and return to her instrument, playing by the feel of the vibrations Jaxon had taught her to track through her tongue and teeth. An aging dancer in Rio, his balance ruined by a fall, who spent weeks with Jaxon walking barefoot through kitchens and markets, following smell and temperature until his fear of movement loosened its grip, and no lawsuits. No accusations. Just scattered stories, told in shaky phone videos and long, grateful posts, about senses waking up where science had gone quiet. Thorne hated every one of them. He slammed the laptop shut and went back to the tablet, as if the screen might give him a reason not to believe what he'd just read. The elixir had thickened and it no longer boiled. It pulsed. Slow, heavy breaths of light rose and fell, the surface swelling, settling, swelling again. The color had deepened to a dense, impossible gold, too rich to be safe. Jaxon dipped a ladle in, lifted it. The liquid clung like honey, stretching into a long, trembling thread before breaking and falling back into itself. Jackson's face was slick with sweat. He didn't look triumphant. He looked exhausted, humbled, like the root had taken something from him in exchange for what it had given up. He turned off the heat. The silence that followed the dying flame seemed louder than the boil. "This is not for your eyes," he said under his breath, to the pot, to himself, to whatever old superstition he carried. "This is for his bridge." He began the slow work of straining, reducing, cooling. Muslin cloth darkened as it caught the fibrous remains. The liquid that slipped through grew clearer, more concentrated. Jars appeared, small, and the kitchen wasn't supposed to have footsteps that small. Thorne realized it a heartbeat too late. He was in his study, half listening to an earnings call, half watching the kitchen cameras like always, when a new shape slipped into frame, thin, cautious, one hand skimming the wall, the other held just in front of him like he was feeling for a door that wasn't there. Caspian. Not in his suite. Not in the controlled, padded corridor built for him. In the kitchen. Thorne's throat went dry. Jaxon appeared at the edge of the frame, wiping his hands on a towel. He didn't look surprised. He looked like he'd been waiting. "You made it," he said quietly. "Good. Stop there." Caspian obeyed, toes at the edge of the island. The overhead lights were softer today, shadows curling in the corners. On the counter, a forest of herbs spilled from bowls and jars. Basil, thyme, rosemary, mint, things Thorne couldn't name in English, let alone in whatever language Jaxon used when he muttered to himself. "You're not supposed to be here," Thorne whispered to the empty room, as if the walls might carry the warning down the hall. In the kitchen, Jaxon stepped closer but didn't touch. "Remember what we agreed," he said. "You're king in this space. Nothing happens without your word. If you want to go back, say so." "I don't," Caspian said, almost too fast. "I want to smell that." He turned his head toward a bowl piled with dark, glossy leaves. Jaxon smiled. "Good nose. That's holy basil. It's loud even when it's trying to be polite." He took Caspian's hand then, very gently, guiding it to the rim of the bowl. He didn't press the boy's fingers in. He just let him find his own way. Caspian dipped his fingertips, brushed the leaves, flinched at the unexpected wetness of lingering water drops, then laughed at himself. The sound sliced through Thorne. "Tell me what it feels like," Jaxon said. "Soft," Caspian murmured, "but bumpy on top, like tiny roads. It smells green, sharp, like it's trying to wake me up." "Perfect," Jaxon said. "Now this one." He moved Caspian's hand to another bowl. The boy explored more confidently now, pinching, rubbing, bringing fingers to his nose. Thyme, sage, cilantro. Each touch turned into a description. Each description turned into a new map only he and Jaxon could see. Thorne's heart pounded against his ribs. This broke every rule. Caspian was supposed to stay upstairs. Meals delivered. Plates balanced on his knees. Contact controlled. supervised, justified in triplicate. The kitchen was heat and blades and risk. It was where accidents happened, not awakenings. He jabbed the intercom button, then stopped, finger hovering on the screen. Jaxon had stepped back, letting Caspian stand on his own between the herbs and the stove. The boy's posture was different here, less folded inward, more anchored. His hands were out, palms flat on the counter, claiming space that had never been offered to him before. "What color is the room today?" Jaxon asked. Caspian inhaled, long and slow. The motion lifted his whole body. "Warm yellow," he said, "but someone opened a window, because there's blue hiding near the ceiling." Jaxon glanced at the camera then. Only for a second. Just long enough for Thorne to feel seen that he's doing this on purpose. Thorne thought. He wants me to watch. Paranoia surged. Felt almost like adrenaline, hot and clarifying. Jaxon had crossed a line. He'd invited the boy into danger, into non-sterile surfaces and unpredictable heat, into a room where one wrong reach could mean a burn or a cut or worse. What if Caspian slipped on the tile? What if he grabbed the wrong handle? What if the gas failed and a flame flared too high? What if? I'm right here, Jaxon was saying calmly. My hands are your guardrails. Stretch your fingers. That's it. Feel the grain of the wood. Every line is a path. Follow one. Caspian traced the cutting board with both hands, palms brushing scars left by years of knives. His expression grew intent, almost serene. This boy, who had spent his life wrapped in smooth surfaces and rounded edges, was lightly dragging his skin over every imperfection Jaxon could put within reach, Thorne's control. The thing he wore like armor started to feel like a costume that didn't fit anymore. He turned away from the tablet, then turned back instantly, unable to stand not seeing. Images from the past clawed up, white rooms, doctors saying risk and exposure and we can't guarantee. His wife's still face in the delivery room, that first awful drive home without her. Control was the only thing he'd had left. Protocols, rules, restrictions. They had kept the chaos outside the walls, even if they kept most of life out with it. And here was this man, barefoot in spirit if not in fact, inviting his son to run his fingers along the very chaos Thorne had spent a decade stamping out. Jaxon sprinkled something onto the board, rock salt, coarse and uneven. Find the stars, he said. Caspian's fingertips brushed the crystals. He gasped. They're cold, he said, sharper than the wood, like tiny lights. Good, Jaxon whispered. Remember that feeling. When you're scared, you can always look for the stars under your hands. Thorne's vision blurred for a second. He didn't know if it was anger or something dangerously close to gratitude. By the time the storm rolled in over the hill, the elixir had been boiled down to something that barely counted as liquid anymore. Thunder grumbled somewhere beyond the glass walls of Thorne's office, a low warning that matched the pressure building in his chest. He should have been on the call with Tokyo, closing a deal that would shift 3 markets. Instead, his eyes kept slipping to the tablet on his desk, to the kitchen feed he'd left open out of habit and now couldn't look away from. The pot was gone and no more slow, patient pulses of molten gold. No steam curling up like ghosts. Just Jaxon at the island, shoulders tense, a small metal stand in front of him, and on it, a glass vial no longer than Thorne's thumb. Inside, the world burned. The last of the aerosol had been reduced to a single viscous drop. It clung to the bottom of the glass like a swallowed star, too bright, too dense, light beating against the curved walls as if it were trying to escape. Every time Jaxon tilted the vial, the drop rolled with a heavy grace, leaving glowing trails that faded slowly, like afterimages behind closed eyes. Thorne's mouth went dry. This was no broth, no tea, no harmless sensory bridge. This looked like something wrenched out of a story people whispered around fires and never wrote down. Concentrated risk, distilled into a single swallow of light on the screen. Jaxon didn't look like a chef anymore. He looked like a man standing at the edge of something that could swallow him whole. He checked the vial against the light, watching the glow, then set it carefully back in the stand. He wiped his hands on a towel, even though they were already clean. The small, unnecessary gesture scared Thorne more than anything else. Jaxon was stalling, saying goodbye to certainty. The office door stayed shut, but the world outside the screens fell away anyway. Thorne's pulse roared in his ears as he flicked to another camera angle with a swipe. The view jumped: stove, sink, doorway. Empty. Where is he? Thorne whispered .As if summoned. Caspian's small frame appeared at the edge of the main feed. He stepped into the kitchen with that careful confidence he'd begun to wear like a second skin, one hand following the familiar strip along the wall until it met the cool shoulder of the fridge, then the counter, then the stool Jaxon always kept in the same place. Now Jaxon moved to meet him, slower than usual. There was a solemnity to the air, something that made even the herbs on the counter seem to stand at attention. Careful, Thorne hissed to the screen. Not today. Not with that. But the microphones gave him no power here. Hey Cass, Jaxon said softly. You remember when we talked about thresholds? The lines you can't uncross, Caspian answered, climbing onto the stool. Like when you taste something for the first time. After that, your mouth can't pretend it hasn't met it. Exactly. Jaxon's smile looked fragile. We're at one now. He reached for the stand. Thorne's heart slammed against his ribs, and for a second, his hand hovered over the call button to the security wing. One press, and men with earpieces would be in that kitchen in under a minute. One press, and this experiment, this madness, this fragile thread of change would snap. He didn't press it. Instead, he edged closer to the desk, knuckles white on the tablet, watching his son lean toward danger. Jaxon lifted the vial. The single drop of gold rolled slowly, leaving a smear of light behind it. It was thicker than oil, more patient than honey. It looked like it knew it was important. Caspian tilted his head. It sounds loud, he whispered. Thorne almost laughed at the insanity of it. The microphones were sensitive, but the vial made no noise. Yet the boy's face was serious, intent, listening to something only he could hear. What's it saying? Jaxon asked. Caspian paused, breathing through his nose. It feels like the color of the sun when I stand behind the big window in the hallway. Not on my skin. Behind. Like it wants in. Jaxon nodded, as if the answer matched a script only he could see. This is the fire, young prince, he said. The piece of the root that remembers every dawn it ever drank. We're not going to put it in your eyes. We're going to light your inner world. The pathways that talk to your brain. The ones that got scared and shut their doors. Inner world. Pathways. Shut doors. Thorne heard none of it with a scientist's patience. He heard poison in a storybook's clothing. His body moved before his mind finished arguing. He shot up from the chair, the tablet clattering onto the desk, the Tokyo conference still droning through the speakerphone behind him. Papers slid to the floor. The storm outside cracked, lightning ghosting across the window as he yanked the office door open and took the corridor at a near run. Down the hall, past portraits that watched him with painted indifference. Past the elevator he didn't trust to be fast enough. He took the stairs instead, his polished shoes loud on the steps, each impact echoing the thud of his heart. On the screen, abandoned on his desk, the scene continued without him. Caspian's hands were cupped, palms up. Jaxon held the vial between them like an offering. I'm not going to force anything, Jaxon said. You tell me how close I can bring it. Closer? Caspian breathed. Jaxon moved the vial toward the boy's face, slow enough that even the cameras picked up the care in each millimeter. The drop glowed brighter, as if proximity to living skin excited it. It painted warm gold across Caspian's cheeks, turning the pale angles of his face into something almost mythic. Too close! Thorne hit the last step so hard his knees screamed, but he barely felt it. The kitchen door was ahead, a rectangle of light at the end of the corridor. Voices bled through. Jaxon's low and steady, Caspian's higher, trembling with something Thorne couldn't name. His hand slammed into the handle. The door flew open. For a heartbeat, time stopped. Jaxon was kneeling by the island, one hand steadying Caspian's chin, the other holding the tiny glass vial inches from the boy's eye. The drop of gold inside it had finally escaped, balanced on the lip like a star about to fall. It cast a warm, impossible light over Caspian's face, turning his pale skin into bronze, his unseeing eyes into deep, shimmering pools. Behind them, the storm flared white through the window. The marble counters glowed. The whole world narrowed to that single gleaming point. "What are you doing?" Thorne roared. The word cracked across the room like lightning. A bowl rattled on the counter. Somewhere, metal rang. Caspian flinched, but Jaxon didn't jerk, didn't drop the vial. He stayed perfectly still, only his eyes flicking up to meet Thorne's. "Stop," Thorne thundered, moving forward. "Get away from him. Put it down now." Caspian's hand shot out, not toward Thorne, toward Jaxon. His fingers closed around the chef's wrist with a surprising strength, as if fear had burned away and left only choice. "Don't," Caspian said, voice shaking. "Please, don't stop." Thorne froze, breath locked in his chest up close. The scene was worse than the camera had shown. The air smelled faintly of something sharp and sweet, like burnt sugar on a forest floor. The light from the vial wasn't just reflecting. It was emitting, painting soft gold along Jaxon's jaw, catching in the curls at his temple, turning every stray speck of dust into drifting sparks. "This is the fire we talked about," Jaxon said quietly to Caspian, as if Thorne's presence had become weather loud, but not in control. "Last step. One drop. If you say no, we walk away and nothing changes. If you say yes, we light the bridge." "He is a child," Thorne snarled. "He doesn't understand consent to whatever experiment this is." Caspian turned his face toward the sound of his father's voice. For once, he didn't look small. "I understand wanting something," he whispered. "I'm tired of being dark, father." The last word landed like a blade. Jaxon's hand trembled once, then stilled again under Caspian's grip. He looked up at Thorne fully now. There was no defiance in his eyes, no arrogance, only a clear, unwavering conviction that felt more dangerous than either. "I am not putting anything in his eye that will scar him," Jaxon said. "This isn't acid. It isn't a drug. This concentrated light and earth. It won't give him sight. It will give his nerves a signal strong enough to notice, a feeling his brain can't ignore." "He is not your experiment," Thorne shot back. His voice broke on the last word. "He is my son." "Then listen to him," Jaxon said. The room went quiet. Caspian's breathing was the only sound, quick, shallow, catching at the top like he was standing on a cliff and trying to decide whether to jump. The gold drop trembled on the rim of the glass, heavy, inevitable. "Tell me," Jaxon murmured, "is this what you want?" Caspian swallowed. "Yes." Thorne's world tilted. Every instinct he had screamed no. Every dollar he'd spent, every protocol he'd written, every sleepless night studying worst-case scenarios. All of it clawed at his throat, begging him to rip the vial away, to wrap his son in rules and medically approved nothingness. But the boy's hand stayed wrapped around Jaxon's wrist. Not his, and Caspian was shaking, not from fear, but from something that looked horribly like hope. "Caspian," Thorne said, softer now, stepping closer. "If this hurts you—" "It already hurts," Caspian whispered. "Every day. You just can't see it." The words punched clean through him. He swayed, caught himself on the edge of the counter. For a dizzy second, he saw himself how Jaxon must see him. Expensive suit, storm in his eyes, always arriving too late, always trying to shut the door after the damage had already been done. Jaxon shifted slightly, bringing Thorne back. "I need to release it while it's awake," he said. "If you're going to stop me, do it now." Silence stretched. The storm outside rolled, low and distant, As if the whole sky were waiting for his answer, Thorne stepped forward until he was right there. So close he could see the tiny bubbles trapped inside the glowing drop, the fine tremor in Jaxon's fingers, the freckles along Caspian's nose he barely remembered noticing before he opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Caspian, still holding Jaxon's wrist, turned his face back toward the warmth. "Do it!" he breathed. Jaxon nodded once. He angled. The vial, slow, reverent. The golden drop loosened, clung for a heartbeat, then surrendered to gravity. It fell in a perfect line, landing on the rim of Caspian's lower lid, not in his eye, but on the skin just above the lashes, where the nerves were closest to the surface. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then the boy inhaled sharply, a sound too big for his small chest. The glow bled outward in a thin, shimmering thread, tracing the delicate veins around his eye like a map being drawn in real time. Caspian's whole body went still. The kitchen blurred around him. Jaxon's hand hovered, ready to catch, but he didn't touch. Caspian's lips parted. "Father," he whispered, "the light is here, not out there, not in some future miracle or clinical trial. Here." He pressed his free hand flat against his chest. "It's moving," he gasped. "It's buzzing under my skin. It's like someone opened a window inside my head. I can feel shape, not pictures, but something bright. Like the dark isn't just empty anymore." Thorne couldn't move. All the scans he'd memorized, all the charts showing dead pathways and silent synapses, shattered beneath the sight of his son shivering with sensation he had no words for yet. No doctor had ever described this. No report had ever captured the way Caspian's blind eyes seemed to focus on something only he could see. Jaxon finally looked up at Thorne again. There was no triumph in his expression. "No, I told you so." Only a deep, steady hope that looked almost painful. "This is what I meant," he said quietly. "Not curing his eyes, waking his world." Thorne stared at him, breathing hard. He had burst in here, ready to rip a stranger away from his son, ready to prove himself right about quacks and charlatans and the dangers of believing in anything that didn't come with a stamp and a signature. Instead, he stood in the doorway like the intruder, watching his own child glow with a feeling he had never given him. A light that had nothing to do with sight and everything to do with being truly, fiercely alive for the first time. Caspian turned his head, face streaked with faint, fading traces of gold. "Can you see me?" Thorne asked before he could stop himself. Caspian smiled, small and stunned. "No," he said, "but I can feel you, brighter than before." The words hit harder than any diagnosis ever had. In that moment, with the empty vial between them and the last echoes of his own shout still clinging to the walls, Thorne Blackwood understood with brutal clarity. His son had never been the only one living in the dark, and the man he'd been so certain would harm the boy was kneeling beside him, steady, hopeful, holding nothing more dangerous than a bridge out of the prison Thorne himself had built. The kitchen felt oddly quiet once the shouting stopped. The vial sat on the counter between them, empty now, its glass still holding a faint echo of gold like the afterglow of a sunset that refused to give up. Caspian's lashes were damp where the last traces of the elixir had marked his skin, thin shimmer fading into nothing. His breathing had slowed, but there was a new alertness in the way he held himself. Chin lifted, shoulders open, like someone listening to a song only he could hear. Thorne stood there, hands useless at his sides. He had expected screaming, convulsions, some dramatic collapse that would prove him right, prove this whole thing had been a reckless betrayal. Instead, his son simply existed more vividly than before. The boy's sightless eyes were still sightless, but they were no longer blank. They seemed to be tracking currents in the air, small movements inside himself, as if a lantern had been lit just out of view, and he could feel the warmth even if he couldn't see the flame. "What's it like now?" Jaxon asked softly. Caspian took a moment, searching for words. "Like someone turned up the volume on the dark," he said at last. "It's not empty anymore. It's thick, I can feel where you are and where Father is. I can feel the window. The light isn't pictures, but it's pressure. Pushes where it's strongest. I didn't know it did that. He lifted a hand and pointed, not perfectly, but close, toward the far wall of glass where the storm clouds had begun to thin. His fingers trembled, not with fear, but with the strange thrill of naming something new. Jaxon smiled, but it was quiet, almost reverent. "That's the bridge," he said. "Your eyes may never draw sharp lines the way other people's do, but the nerves behind them aren't dead. They were just ignored. This doesn't cure your blindness. It teaches your brain to listen to a different kind of light." He picked up the empty vial, held it between thumb and forefinger. "This wasn't medicine for the eyeball," he went on. "It was a flare for the soul, a signal strong enough that the rest of you had to wake up and notice, then remember how to pay attention without it." Thorne forced himself to speak. "How long does it last?" "If I'd flooded his system," Jaxon said, turning the vial so the faint sheen caught, "maybe it would have burned out quickly, a bright, foolish spark. But one drop doesn't overwrite anything. It introduces. It shows the pathway, then steps aside. His body will do the real work now, if you let him keep exploring taste, smell, temperature, vibration. The more he connects, the more the darkness becomes a place he knows instead of a void he fears." Caspian reached out. His hands searched the air until they found Jaxon's, closing around the empty glass. "Can I keep it?" he asked. Thorne flinched. There was no light left in the vial, nothing dangerous, just a ghost of gold clinging to the curve. But the way Caspian held it, with both hands, cradling it like a relic from some private miracle, made it feel heavier than any asset Thorne had ever acquired. Jaxon glanced at Thorne, as if asking permission without words. Something in Thorne balked. A lifetime of negotiation flared. "That is mine," he wanted to say. "I paid for the root. I built this kitchen. I own this house, this risk, this outcome." Then he saw Caspian's face. The boy's expression was soft, almost shocked, like someone who had opened a door expecting more darkness and found, instead, a single candle burning patiently on the floor. His thumbs brushed the glass, memorizing every ridge, every imperfection. Thorne realized, with a slow, brutal clarity, that he had never seen his son look at anything, really look with his whole being. The way he looked at that empty vial. "Yes," Thorne heard himself say. "Keep it." The word tasted strange, like surrender, like air in lungs that had forgotten how to expand fully. Caspian smiled. The curve of it wasn't wild or euphoric. It was simple, deep, the kind of smile that came from finding solid ground after years of thinking the floor could vanish at any second. "Thank you," he whispered. Thorne wasn't sure which of them the gratitude was for. Silence settled, but it was different from the silence that usually ruled this room. This one buzzed, faintly, carrying the hum of refrigerators, the tick of cooling metal, the soft, steady rhythm of Caspian's breath. Thorne heard all of it as if his own senses had been tuned by proximity to whatever his son was feeling. Jaxon broke it gently. "I know you think I violated every reasonable rule you set," he said. "You're not wrong. I brought him into the kitchen. I let him touch heat and knives and things no textbook would approve. I pushed, but I never pushed past his no. Only past yours." Thorne looked at him. "For a man who nearly blinded my son further," he said, voice low, "you're being incredibly calm." Jaxon shook his head. "I didn't touch his blindness," he replied. "I touched his fear, and yours whether you meant me to or not. Despair narrows the world. It makes everything about survival, not living. You built walls to keep pain out. They did their job. They also kept out almost everything else. The words should have offended him. Instead, they landed with the dull, heavy accuracy of truth." Thorne thought of the cameras, the protocols, the way every decision since the diagnosis had been about minimizing risk, never about maximizing joy. He thought of Caspian's room, padded and safe and silent. He thought of how often he'd stood in the doorway, promising himself The consultants arrived 2 days later, right on schedule, armed with their white coats and measured sympathy. They filed into the sitting room like a board of directors, tablets in hand, charts ready, arguments sharpened. They had new trials to propose, new protocols, new ways to say the same old sentence, that Caspian's condition was unlikely to improve. But there were always adjacent therapies they could bill for trying. Thorne listened. He let them talk about risk and liability, about maintaining routines, about not encouraging unrealistic expectations in the boy. One of them, the boldest, suggested limiting Caspian's time with alternative practitioners in case he developed emotional dependency on non-evidence-based interventions. That was the one who made the decision easy. Thorne stood. "Thank you," he said, voice calm in a way that felt new even to him, "for everything you've done up to this point." They relaxed a little, mistaking his tone for the usual deference. He didn't let them stay mistaken for long. "You're all dismissed," he added. "Effective immediately. My office will settle your outstanding invoices. There will be no further consultations." The silence that followed was almost satisfying. They protested, of course, spoke of responsibility, suggested second opinions on his choice to change course. One of them tried to invoke his late wife, as if her memory were a lever they could still pull. Thorne did not shout. He simply repeated, "You're dismissed," until the last coat vanished through the door and the house swallowed the sound of their retreating footsteps. For the first time in years, the calendar on his desk looked light. No appointments stacked like sandbags against a flood that never receded. No travel plans to chase the next thin hope. Just empty squares, waiting. He found Jaxon in the kitchen. Naturally, Caspian was there too, perched on his usual stool, head tilted, eyes closed. Jaxon held a pan over the flame with one hand, shaking it gently. Seeds jumped and popped inside, releasing a hiss and a smell that hit Thorne halfway across the room. Nutty, smoky, alive. "What color?" Jaxon asked. Caspian's nose wrinkled. "Orange, but deep, like the part of a fire that doesn't show unless you stare at it." "Good," Jaxon said. "That's cumin waking up." He glanced over and saw Thorne. "You look like a man who's either made a terrible mistake or finally done something right," he said. "Maybe both," Thorne replied. Caspian turned toward his voice. "What happened?" "I fired them," Thorne said. "All of them." The boy's lips parted. "The doctors. The ones who kept promising to fix you if I just paid for one more attempt," Thorne said. "We're not doing that anymore." A small, uncertain smile tugged at Caspian's mouth. "So what are we doing?" Thorne hesitated, then crossed the distance between them, drawn more by instinct than decision. He rested a hand lightly on his son's back, feeling the warmth through the thin fabric of his shirt, the steady rise and fall of breath. "We're going to learn how to live," he said. "Properly this time." Jaxon set the pan down, cutting the flame. He didn't say anything, but his shoulders relaxed in a way Thorne had rarely seen, as if some weight he'd been bracing for had finally rolled off. The changes after that weren't dramatic at first. They were small, specific, but they added up. The cameras stayed for security, Thorne told himself, but the monitors in his study weren't always on anymore. Some nights, he chose to be in the kitchen instead of watching it from a distance. He found he preferred the real smell of garlic to the idea of control. Caspian came down almost every day now, feet finding the pattern of the steps with growing confidence. The mansion, once a careful maze of polished stone and quiet dread, began to rearrange itself around him. Rugs appeared in halls to map routes by texture. Wind chimes hung near doorways, each tuned differently so he could tell where he was by sound. Someone, Jaxon obviously, started keeping bowls of citrus on side tables. The sharp, bright scent marking rest spots like little suns scattered through the house. Thorne started asking questions he'd never thought to ask. "What does the pool sound like?" he asked one afternoon, standing with Caspian at the edge of the indoor water. The boy's hand rested on his arm, fingers loosely hooked. "Big," Caspian said. "Soft big, like a room that's always breathing." "And my office?" Thorne pressed. "Dense," Caspian replied without missing a beat. "The air gets stuck on the edges of the furniture. It's heavy, like it's carrying too many thoughts." Thorne laughed, low and astonished. "That tracks." They walked more, not on hospital treadmills under fluorescent lights, but down the driveway at dusk, along the gravel where the stones crunched in different notes under their feet. Caspian named smells the way other children named colors. Wet leaves, hot asphalt, distant rain, the metallic tang before a storm. He taught Thorne to hear the difference between wind in pine needles and wind against glass. To know, by sound alone, when a car was coming too fast up the hill. Jaxon remained in the kitchen, but Chef no longer covered what he was. He became a translator. He'd place a plate in front of Thorne and Caspian and say, "This is what courage tastes like."